She was soaking wet, shivering and growling at anyone who came close, but not for herself. She was guarding a dying owl. I spotted her in Zilker Park. Austin, near the edge of the woods where the trail cuts close to the trees, a small German shepherd puppy, maybe 6 months old, stood rigid in the wet leaves, her fur matted and her body trembling from the cold. Her ears were back, her paws spread, and her dark eyes locked on me. As I slowed down, I thought she was hurt. At first, her tail was low. One leg slightly lifted, her chest heaving like she'd been running. But she didn't move, didn't run, just stood her ground like she had something to protect. That's when I saw it tucked just behind her, barely visible under the curl of her body wings, large streaked wings and owl. Its body was twisted at an unnatural angle, feathers slicked with moisture and one eye half closed, the other fluttering open now and then as if it were trying to stay awake. The puppy wasn't lying on it. She wasn't even touching it, but her position made it clear she had chosen to guard it, like it mattered, like it belonged to her. I stepped closer and she growled again, low and hoarse, her muscles trembling from more than cold. Now fear maybe, or desperation. "Hey," I said softly. Kneeling, "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt either of you." She blinked, her growl faded. Her eyes didn't leave mine. There was a frayed red collar around her neck that's soaked and dangling, with a torn piece of rope still attached. Someone had tied her up recently and someone had let her go, or worse, left her behind. She had no tag, no food, no shelter, just a wounded bird. And still she stayed. The joggers didn't stop. The families passed by. Nobody seemed to notice the little German shepherd puppy standing guard in the mud and the rain over something nobody else would have seen. But I saw her and I couldn't walk away. My name is Ethan, and that moment changed both our lives. I took a slow step forward, careful not to startle her. The German shepherd puppy didn't growl. This time she just watched. Her legs were stiff, like she wasn't sure whether to run or defend again, but she didn't move from that owl. The bird wasn't doing well. Its feathers were soaked and matted with dirt and moisture, and one wing looked painfully out of place. I'd never seen a wild animal this close before, especially not like this. Its chest rose and fell so shallowly. I had to look twice to be sure it was breathing at all. The puppy turned her head toward the owl, then looked back at me, and something in her eyes hit me hard. It wasn't fear. It was a kind of guarded hope, like she'd been waiting not just for help, but for someone who would understand. I knelt again, keeping my body low, my hands out. "You're okay," I murmured. "I'm not going to hurt you or her." She stepped back just an inch, barely enough to let me see the owl more clearly. Not enough to break her line of protection. Her loyalty was fierce for something she didn't even know. That's when I noticed how thin she was. Her ribs showed through her wet fur, and there was a faint scab on her front leg. Half healed, she'd been out here for a while, maybe days, maybe longer, but she hadn't left this bird. I reached for my phone and called Wildlife Rescue. They told me someone would be dispatched within the hour and to keep watch if I could. I said I would. I didn't know what else to do except stay. A man jogged past behind me. Earbuds in, glanced over and kept going. A mother and two kids strolled past the other way. The little boy stopped. "Dad, is that your dog?" he called out. "She's not mine," I said quietly, "but maybe I'm hers." The puppy sat right beside the owl, rain still dripping from her ears, her gaze steady on mine. It struck me then she had chosen to protect something weaker than herself, even while no one protected her. That kind of instinct doesn't come from training, it comes from heart. I didn't know her name yet, but she was already telling me who she was. I sat cross-legged on the damp ground, just a few feet from her. The German shepherd puppy didn't move, didn't relax. She just watched me with those sharp, alert eyes, tired but unblinking. The owl behind her barely stirred, its feathers trembling every so often with the wind. She was so young, just a baby, and yet she carried herself like a soldier on a mission. I scanned the area. The drizzle had stopped, but the sky still hung heavy and gray above the trees. A few runners passed again. A couple sat on a bench in the distance. No one looked our way. It was like we were invisible. The puppy finally shifted. She stretched her front legs out, then curled her body slightly closer to the owl, almost like she was shielding it with her side. Still no sound, no bark, just silence and those dark watching eyes. I reached into my backpack and pulled out the granola bar I hadn't eaten earlier. I peeled it, slowly broke off a piece and placed it on the grass near her. Her nose twitched, but she didn't move. Not until I looked away out of the corner of my eye, I saw her inch forward. She sniffed the food, glanced back at the owl, and then cautiously ate it, one small piece, then another. That's when I realized how hungry she must have been. But she hadn't left her post. Not even for food, good girl. I whispered, her ears flicked, and for the first time her tail gave a small, almost invisible shift in the grass. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to touch her, to scratch behind those damp ears, and tell her she was safe now. But I didn't move. I knew better. Trust wasn't something she gave easily. Not after being left the way she had. The red collar on her neck was cracked and worn. The rope still hanging from it dragged in the mud when she moved. Someone had tied her. Someone had let her go. A flash of something twisted in my chest. Anger, maybe, or guilt. She'd been someone's responsibility, and now she was a child, protecting another broken thing, while the world walked by and still she stayed the owl. Let out a weak, raspy breath and shifted its head, eyes fluttering. The puppy tensed, immediately turned and gently nudged the bird's wing with her nose. She hadn't abandoned it. Not even now. I checked my phone 32 minutes since I'd called for help. I looked at her again this time, not as a stranger, but as someone who understood, someone who had once been left behind too. She didn't know me, but somehow I think she knew why I sat there soaked to the skin, watching over them, because I couldn't walk away. And because neither could she. When I was 8 years old, my father brought home a German Shepherd puppy we named Daisy. She was wild and sweet, always underfoot, always watching me. She grew up into a protector, the kind of dog who stood between me and the world. Without ever being told, I remember how she sat outside my bedroom door the night my mom left for hours, until I finally opened it and curled up beside her on the carpet. That was the first time I understood what loyalty really looked like, watching this puppy, now soaked and shivering, but still refusing to leave the owl. Something deep inside me, cracked open the years, had pushed that memory down so far, I forgot what it felt like to be protected by something that expected nothing in return. But here it was, again unmistakable. She had no name, no home, no one. And still she stayed. A light breeze picked up, stirring the leaves around us. The owl blinked slowly and tried to move its head, but the effort seemed too much. Its body barely shifted. I leaned closer, not enough to scare the puppy, just enough to see the damage. The wing was bad, likely broken. There were no signs of blood, but the way it slumped told me it wouldn't last much longer without help. I called someone. I said quietly, not knowing why I was speaking aloud. "They'll come, you did good. Okay, you kept her alive?" The puppy tilted her head slightly, like she was listening. I swear she understood every word. Then she did something I wasn't expecting. She walked 2 cautious steps toward me, still tense but no longer defensive. Her eyes met mine, then she looked down at the granola wrapper still beside my foot and gave it a sniff. I held out my hand palm up. She didn't lick it, didn't wag, just stood there, one paw slightly lifted, like she was ready to bolt. If I moved too fast, but she didn't bolt. Her ears twitched again and she let out a breath. It was almost a sigh. That's when I noticed the scab on her front leg again, thin and pink, and healing badly. She'd been hurt out here alone, and somehow, despite that, she hadn't turned cold. She hadn't given up. The rescue center called back. Just then, I answered on speaker. "This is Wildlife Response. Are you still with the bird?" "Yes," I said, watching the puppy's eyes widen slightly at the voice. "And there's a puppy, too. She's the one who found her." "Understood, we're sending a tech your way. Stay with them." I hung up, slid the phone into my pocket, and looked back at the German Shepherd puppy sitting beside the injured owl. She looked tired, now exhausted. But there was something else too: relief, as if she knew help was coming, as if she'd done her part, and maybe she was willing to trust me to do the rest. It took them 47 minutes to arrive, 47 long, wet, silent minutes, where I sat in the mud across from that German Shepherd puppy, watching her refuse to let her guard down. Not for a second. Not even when a squirrel ran past. Not when a toddler let go of his balloon and it popped right next to us. She never left the owl. The wind had picked up her fur, still damp, clung to her skinny frame. Her ribs looked sharper now in the light, her front legs shaking slightly from the strain of standing so long. I wanted to tell her to rest to sit, but I knew better she wouldn't sit down unless the owl did too. Then I heard the truck, a white pickup with green letters, Wildlife Rescue, pulled up just past the parking lot. I waved them down and two responders climbed out, one with a carrier, the other with gloves and a folded towel. They moved fast, professional, but not fast enough for her. The moment they approached, the puppy bolted in front of the owl. A low bark ripped from her chest, dry and raspy from disuse. She lowered her head tail and stiff front paws splayed like she was ready to take on anything that came near her fallen companion. "Whoa," the woman said, pausing a few feet away. "Is she with you?" "No," I said. "She's protecting it." The responders exchanged a glance. "We don't usually get this kind of behavior. She's been here the whole time," I added. "She found the owl stayed with her. She hasn't eaten, hasn't left, I think. I think she thinks it's hers." The man crouched slowly, holding out the towel like a peace offering. The puppy didn't move, but her growl deepened. The owl stirred behind her, trying to lift its head. The tension in the air was unbearable. A wild bird too weak to escape a puppy, too determined to let go, and a team trying not to spook either. I slid closer and whispered, "Nella, I don't know where the name came from. It just felt right." She looked at me, blinked once, and something changed. The growl stopped. I kept my voice low. "Let them help her. You did your part." She looked back at the owl, her tail twitched, and then slowly she stepped aside. The responders moved in, gently wrapping the owl in the towel. The bird didn't resist. It couldn't, as they lifted it into the carrier. The puppy crept closer, sniffing the edge of the box, letting out a soft, questioning whine. "She's not going far," the woman said kindly. "We'll take good care of her." But when they turned to carry the box back to the truck, the German Shepherd puppy followed, not behind me. Behind them, her paws sunk into the grass, eyes locked on the crate. Her body said everything. Wherever she goes, I go too. I stood watching her trail after them, slow, silent, and sure. She didn't look back at me, and I wasn't sure if that hurt more or if it meant she'd already chosen where she belonged. She didn't hesitate when the rescue team loaded the crate into the back of the truck. The German Shepherd puppy jumped up onto the bumper paws, pressed to the tailgate, eyes wide and desperate. Her nose bumped the carrier's edge through the bars, and she let out a low-breathing whine that shattered something inside me. "She wants to come," I said, barely above a whisper. The man from the team hesitated. "We can't take dogs," he replied. "We're not equipped. We only deal with injured wildlife." "I'll take her." I said the words came out before I could even think she's not a stray anymore. I didn't know if that was true, but I knew it needed to be. They nodded, closed the tailgate, and gently encouraged the puppy back down. She resisted, stiffened her paws, scraped against the metal like she was trying to cling to it. Finally, she turned and looked at me, not with fear, not with anger, but with a question. Was I going to leave her too? I opened the back door of my truck and crouched. "Come on, girl, let's go." She paused, visibly torn, then leapt down and trotted to me, her wet paws slapping against the pavement. She didn't jump in. She waited, watching testing. I patted the seat. "You've done enough guarding for today." She climbed in slowly, turned once in a circle, then curled up with her head against the door. She didn't make a sound for the first time since I found her. She rested. I got in and just sat there for a second. Heart pounding harder than it should have, the owl was gone. And so was the strange intensity that had filled that quiet little patch of park. But now this German Shepherd puppy was in my back seat, and I didn't even know her story. I glanced at her through the mirror. She was already asleep that night. I gave her a warm bath. She didn't fight me, just stood still as the dirt and leaves washed away her fur, once slick and dark, fluffed out in patches, revealing a rich black and tan coat beneath. After I wrapped her in a towel and laid her on a folded blanket in the corner of the living room, she didn't move. Not even when I set a bowl of food beside her. But when I sat on the floor nearby, she lifted her head an inch closer, one paw stretching toward me. She didn't ask for anything, just made sure I was there. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. The storm outside had passed, but inside something new had started. She didn't eat until midnight. I'd left the bowl beside her blanket and turned off the lights, trying to give her space. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she had followed that owl, how she pressed her nose to the crate like it was the only thing that mattered in the world around 12:14 a.m. I heard the soft clink